Hare Krishna. So we'll continue our discussion on the second chapter from verse 39. Esha te bihita sankhya buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhaya yuktaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Thus far, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So in the previous verse, Krishna had introduced Arjuna to the notion of working without the desire to enjoy the fruits, Nishkam Karma. In 15 verses from 39 to 53, Krishna expands on this concept of Nishkam Karma. Right? So he says that Eshate Bihita Sankhya. He said that so far I have explained to you Sankhya. So Sankhya was the study of the soul. So beginning from verse 12 to 30, Krishna had, through different propositions, explained the nature of the soul, its relationship to the body. He says, Buddhi yoge to imam shrunu. Now I will speak to you about Buddhi yoga. Now Buddhi literally means mind or intelligence. It's a placeholder. So there are no practitioners of Buddhi yoga. Right? Just like you have practitioners of Karma yoga or Jnana yoga, Buddhi yoga is a generic term that is used to refer to one who is performing yoga with proper understanding. And Prabhupada would often say that in the current day, yoga is simply calisthenics. People's understanding of yoga is to take different body postures. That's not yoga. The literal meaning of yoga is to connect to transcendence. That yoga means to bring together. So Buddhi yoga is one who is practicing it with that understanding. Right? So through Sankhya, Krishna had spoken about the nature of the soul. Now there is a difference between knowing and realizing. Right? So one may know the nature of the soul. Right? If we have studied those verses, now we know the nature of the soul. But does that mean that we are realized? So knowledge is intellectual and realizing is experiential. Knowledge is academic and realizing is more intrinsic. When one realizes that one is not the body but the soul, then one's conception of life changes. Right? So even though we have, people have studied the Bhagavad-gita for 50 years, 60 years, but it's still a journey. They may know all the verses, they may accept the verses, but it's still intellectual. So now what Krishna is giving us the path to convert this abstract intellectual understanding to an experiential platform where one can actually act and exist on that platform. That is essentially Nishkam Karma Yoga. Right? So the magic of Nishkam Karma Yoga is now being revealed. What is the point in acting without attachment to the fruits? Right? There is this refrain that Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, act with detachment. Why? This is the answer to the why. That when you act with detachment, you will realize that you are not the body but the soul. Right? So Buddhi Yoga here is the placeholder for Nishkam Karma Yoga. It can also be considered as a placeholder for Bhakti Yoga. And we'll see that as one matures in Nishkam Karma, and if he is under the guidance of a devotee, then that Nishkam Karma transforms into Buddhi Yoga later on. As of now, Krishna is introducing Arjuna to the concept of acting without desire. And this will take one to the platform of acting on the realization of the soul. Now, a possible source of confusion in Arjun's mind is the interplay between karma and jnana. Right? So, when one thinks of karma, one thinks of activities. And when one thinks of jnana, one thinks of inactivity. Like one thinks that, I'm on the platform of knowledge, I'm an intellectual. Karma is fruitive activities. I am doing it. And this contradiction between karma and jnana is something that Arjun will seek clarification 3 times in Bhagavad-gita. Like he'll say, Krishna, what are you asking me to do? So when Krishna is saying Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? So Nishkam Karma Yoga leads to Gyan. So Arjun is saying that Gyan, or Arjun will say that Gyan means inaction, right? And I'm already proposing that myself, that I will not fight. So then why are you taking me through this path? Right? 3 times Arjun will ask this question in chapter 3, 5 and 18. So here, what is Krishna glorifying? Nishkam Karma Yoga as Karma Bandhan Prahayasi. That it will free you from the bondage of works. All kinds of works. Right? So, by now we have this understanding that all kind of work is binding. So when you perform an activity, 2 things happen as a result of it. There is a result of that activity. So you do pious things, there is a positive result. You do impious things, there is a negative result. That is awaiting you at some point of time. Maybe this lifetime, maybe next lifetime, maybe a million lifetimes later on. That's determined by the law of karma. But for sure, for every action, there's a reaction. So that is one consequence of karma. Second consequence of karma is that when you perform an activity, it also leaves behind the seed of desire in you for that very same activity. So in that way, karma is self-perpetuating. People who are addicted to performing pious activities cannot help themselves. I have seen personal examples of people who are not very well off, but they are addicted to charity. And they may actually deprive themselves and their family to give in charity. Just like people are addicted to sinful activities. People may be addicted to drugs. So when the person knows that the drug is bad for me, but there is that addiction. So this is the cyclicity of karma. That the karma leaves a reaction to its action. It also leaves behind in you the desire to do more of the same. And what is the result of these 2 things? That karma becomes self-perpetuating. Activities result in more activities, result in desires for more activities. So the bondage as a result of karma to the material world becomes stronger and stronger. So when Krishna says that when you act on this knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. He's talking about both pious and impious activities. Both of them result in bondage. But when you're acting on the platform of Nishkam Karma, when you're acting on the platform of I'm not the body but the soul, the reactions to the body stop. The realizations of the soul manifest and you are no longer bound by the activities that you perform or the result of those activities. Right? So this is a very, very important point that will get developed later on. Important for us to understand it here. Okay, moving on to the next verse, verse 40. Verse 40. Neha vikramo nashasti pratvayo navidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So in the previous verse, Krishna introduces the concept of Nishkam Karma as a way to get Gyan, specifically Atma Gyan, knowledge of the soul. And knowledge in this context is realized knowledge. One gets a theoretical knowledge, based on that one performs activities without attachment, and that results in practical realization of the soul. This verse is interesting because Krishna introduces bhakti here. So far he is speaking about karma and jnana. And you have to remember that the second chapter is a summary. So Krishna introduces many concepts quickly. Right? He talked about vikarma, he talked about sakam karma, nishkam karma. Now he is introducing bhakti. He does so indirectly. Because for one to really understand bhakti, one has to understand Krishna also. Right? And Krishna doesn't speak about himself really till the fourth chapter. So he does not speak about it explicitly, but he's speaking in abhas. So he's giving indications. So here he's showing the symptoms of bhakti. Right? So he says that in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution. And this can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So as later on we will see, the only thing that has no loss or diminution is bhakti. Everything else suffers from attrition. You perform pious activity, and when you enjoy the results of it, you exhaust the results. Right? Karma is considered to be like depositing and withdrawing from a bank. So there is constant loss or diminution that is happening. In the process of Gyan, while there may not be the reactions to karma, there is always the potential for falling down. So one may advance and one may retreat. In the scriptures we see so many people, great Gyanis, who basically fell. Sometimes because they were attracted to the opposite sex, sometimes because they became angry, different circumstances. So there is always the potential of going forward and backward. But there is only one process in which there is never any loss and there is never any possibility of retracting. And that is bhakti. So Krishna does not speak the word bhakti here, but he is describing bhakti by its symptoms over here. So actually in the next 5 verses, 6 verses actually, until verse 45, Krishna will speak about bhakti from the perspective of the symptoms of the bhakti. So here he talks about 3 symptoms of bhakti. One, that neha bikrama nashasti, right? It will never be destroyed, regardless of anything else, whether you enjoy, suffer, whatever it is. Bhakti is eternal. Second, that swalpamapi asya, that a little bit of advancement will protect one, right? Very potent. And third, from the most dangerous type of fear. So the acharyas say that for a jiva in the body of manushya dharma, in the body of a person, the most dangerous type of fear is falling to a lower form, becoming an animal, becoming a plant, becoming a creature in the hellish planets. That is the mahato bhayat. That is the great fear. And the point that Krishna is making, little bit of bhakti will at the minimum ensure that you will get a human form of birth again. Right? I remember when I was first reading or attending Bhakti Sastri, then the devotee who was teaching, he made this statement when he was reading this verse. He said, on the authority of Krishna, I am now assuring each and every one of you that you will at least get a human birth. That's the bare minimum. Why? Because having read the Bhagavad-gita, we have made a little bit of advancement. Swalpam appears here, right? Alpam means small, swalpam means very little. So this talks about the potency of bhakti. That how much more potent if you practice it more. Where even just a little bit of relationship with Krishna, saying the word Krishna, reading the Bhagavad-gita, all symptoms of bhakti, that will protect one from the greatest fear of falling down to the lower form. Right? So the indestructibility of bhakti, the potency of bhakti. Only bhakti can destroy the modes of material nature. Right? We'll see that later on. Okay. So let's go on to the next verse, verse 41. It's a famous verse. Verse 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhir hai kurunandana bahushakanantascha buddhayo vyavasayana. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. This is one, again, very important verse, because here Krishna is now going to be explaining both what is conducive to advance in bhakti and what are the obstacles to bhakti. So he contrasts those who are able to follow bhakti with those who are not. So what is the difference? Those who follow bhakti are vyavasatmika, that they are fixed. Eka. Vyavasatmika buddhir eka hai kurunandana. Right? So the conception is fixed on only one thing, which is Krishna. And they execute exclusive devotional service to Krishna. Bahushaka anantascha buddhayacho vyavasayana. And what about the others? Avyasayana means that those who are not in the path of bhakti, their mind is bahushaka. Shakha means branches, bahushaka means many branches. Why? Because that's the nature of existence. That they will follow karma. After following karma, they will follow karma sannyas. Then they will follow nishkam karma. Then they might follow Gyan Yoga, follow Astang Yoga. So you will see that they will follow different paths. Or if they're following simply karma, then karma itself gives you so many options. Enjoy like this, enjoy like that, renounce this, do that. So just like a butterfly is flicking across flowers, trying to seek nectar, because the persons are not situated in their constitutional position. Right? So there is this constant strive to look for something that is eluding them. That maybe if I try this, I will be satisfied. Not really. Let me try something else. Not really. Right? So that is the bahushaka of the avyasayana. But once one is fixed in bhakti, eka hai kuru nandana. Right? And Prabhupada writes a wonderful purport to this. He says, faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. He gives an excellent definition of faith. Right? So, what are the components of faith? That there is trust. So, why trust? Because faith talks about things that cannot be empirically verified. Otherwise, it's not faith, right? It's something else. If I tell you that this is a round object, and then I put that object in your hand, then you accept it on empirical observations. There's no question of faith. But faith is based on something that is sublime. Sublime means that it is beyond perception. So it It is unflinching trust. Unflinching means that it does not change. Faith should not be that today I win the lottery, so I have faith. Tomorrow I have an accident, so I lose faith. Day after something good happens, I gain faith again. That's pandering. That's not faith. Faith means that regardless of the circumstances, whether they are conducive or extenuating, faith does not vary. And what is the faith that Krishna is speaking about here? Faith in Him. So when one reposes unflinching trust in Krishna, that is Krishna consciousness. And that is the path to make advancement in one's devotional life. If one is not able to do that, then one has to deal with the Bahushakha Anantasya Buddhiya Vyavasayina. One has to deal with the Bahushakha Anantas. That Ananta means unlimited. Ant means limited, Ananta means unlimited. That one has to then traverse this unlimited path of mental speculation. Okay, so let's look upon the next verse over here, 242. Okay, so this is verse 42 and 43. Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadyante avapaschitaha vedavadarataha partha nanyadastiti vadinaha kamatmana swargapara janma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulama bhogeshwarya gatim prati. Men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So in the previous verse, Krishna had spoken about two kinds of people. Right? He had spoken about the Vyavasatmika Buddhi and the Bahushakha Anantascha, the Avyasayina. Right? Those who are not following the path of bhakti. In these two verses, he speaks about those who are not following the bhakti. Therefore, he speaks about those who are Bahushakha Anantas, who are looking for happiness in many, many ways, because they are avyasayana. Their mind is not fixed in bhakti. So what happens with them? They are yam imam pushpitam vacham. Right? So the Vedas, so we notice that Krishna for the first time uses the word Veda in Bhagavad-gita. Even though he has always been subscribing to the authority of the Vedas, we see here especially calls out Vedavadrata Partha. So he's saying, what does he say? That such people who are attracted to material enjoyment, they get attracted to Yam Imam Pushpitam Vacham. Pushpa means flower, the flowery words of the Vedas. What are the flowery words? That if you perform this sacrifice, you will get fame. If you perform this charity, then you will get wealth. If you do this, your progeny will be healthy. Right? So these are words that flowers are beautiful to behold and aromatic. So these are the kind of promises that the Vedas will give. That in this life you will enjoy, in the next life go to a heavenly planet or take birth in an elevated family, etc. So these people who are materially anchored, they say that there is nothing more. Right? Now, in verses 31 to 38 of this chapter, Krishna had emphasized to Arjun the importance of following prescribed duties, which translates to the importance of following the Vedas. Because where do you get this understanding what your prescribed duties is? From the Vedas. So essentially, Krishna has been emphasizing to Arjun that you follow the Vedas. Now he is saying, do not follow the Vedas, because you see that he is criticizing, right? He says that such people are with men of small intelligence, right? He says that Vedavada Ratha Partha, that they are people of limited intelligence. They have some intelligence. Like Vedavad means supposed followers of the Vedas. So why is he first encouraging Arjun to follow the Vedas, and now he's criticizing the following of Vedas? So one thing to understand is Krishna is not criticizing the Vedas per se. He is criticizing the section of the Vedas that deal with Karma Kand. The purpose of Karma Kand is to enjoy. So these things that are offered over here, elevation to heavenly planet, power, etc., these are all the reasons of Karma Kand. Now one may again say, but even if you accept that, we have proof that Krishna is asking Arjun to do Sakam Karma, right? When he said that happy is the Kshatriya to whom the opportunities to battle come unsought, they will enjoy in this life and next life. This was Krishna saying, right? Now he is criticizing it. Again, that he is not negating what he said, he is building on it, right? He is saying that if your adhikar is that you are attached to the fruits of your result, then at least follow the prescribed duties. But if you wish for further advancements, then don't get entangled by these promises of fruitive activities, because essentially they will bind you to this material world, right? So this apparent contradiction is resolved by understanding the context. Okay, let's move on to the next verse 44. Bhogeshwari prasaktanam taya parta chetesham vyavasayatmika buddhi samadau na vidhiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So you notice that Krishna uses the same word, Vyavasatmika Buddhi. In 241, he had used the Vyavasatmika Buddhi, Ekahe Kuru Nandana. Right? He had said that those who are fixed in their mind, right, they are able to do bhakti. Now he's talking about those, the conditions because of which one cannot develop Vyavasatmika Buddhi. What is the condition? That they are too much attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence. So this is one of the reasons why the followers of Devas find it difficult to execute bhakti, because the relationship with the Devas is one of desiring sense enjoyment and material opulence. Right? A person can only give what they have. If you go to a person who has money, he can give you money. If a person has knowledge, he can give you knowledge. If the person with knowledge does not have money, he cannot give you money. Or if the person with money does not have knowledge, he cannot give you knowledge. So what do Devas have? Devas have the ability to bestow sense enjoyment and material opulence on you. So those who go to the Devas, that's what they get. And they will not be able to take to the process of bhakti, because the Devas are not able to bestow them. Now, in some circumstances, because the Devas themselves are devotees, if one goes to the Devas asking for bhakti, then the Devas can bestow bhakti. But that is very rare. The whole Karma Kand part of the Vedas is essentially approaching the demigods like Indra and Surya and Shiva and Brahma and Durga, is approaching them for what? Their prayers after prayers and verses after verses saying, give me this, give me that, give me whatever else. So because the people are so bewildered in seeking this material opulence, the determination for executing devotional service does not happen. Now, interestingly, this is also one of the reasons that the human form of life is glorified, because the human form of life is a very ideal mixture of intelligence, happiness and distress. In the higher form of lives, as demigods, there is very little distress. They may have more intelligence, but there is very little distress. Too much happiness. So they are too absorbed in enjoyment. But in the human form of life, there is sufficient distress for the person to say that I need to get out of this cycle of distress. There is sufficient pushings in them to question that is that the nature of my happiness that is constantly interrupted by distress. There is sufficient intelligence for them to inquire and adopt the path of devotional service. So that is why this human form of life is glorified. In 5th canto, 20th chapter, the demigods, the devas themselves say that we wish we could take birth in this human form, because in this there is the right mixture. So they are lamenting their own existence, that we are so addicted to enjoyment that same point is made, that the desire to execute bhakti does not manifest. But in the human form of life, there is sufficient mixture. So they have because if one is always in distress, then also the person cannot take to devotional service, because all that person will be doing is dealing with the distress. But in the human form of life, it is chapal. Chapal means flickering. Sometimes happiness, sometimes distress. They get a taste for both. And then they have the intelligence to discriminate and ask the questions that what can I do to get eternal happiness, which leads one to the path of devotional service. Okay, let's go to verse 25. Okay, 245. Traigunna Vishaya Veda Nistraigunna Bhava Arjuna Nirdando Nityasatvasto Niryoga Kshematmama. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjun, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Right? So Krishna in this for the first time introduces the notion of the modes of material nature. Right? He said Traigunya Vishaya Veda. That the main topic of the Vedas is Traigunya. Traigunya means the three modes of material nature. This is a topic that Krishna will speak extensively on in the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. What are the modes of material nature? Right here he just said 3 modes, and there is the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. Driven by the mode of goodness, one does pious activities. By the mode of passion, one does fruitive activities. That one is too much desiring material gains. And driven by the mode of ignorance, one does impious activities. Right? So Krishna is saying that the Vedas, they essentially deal with the 3 modes of material nature. So then what is the recommendation? The recommendation is that Nistraigun Bhavarjuna, that you become transcendental to these 3 modes. And so the point again to understand is that Krishna is speaking about bhakti in terms of its symptoms over here. Right? He hasn't specifically introduced the concept bhakti. But bhakti is the only thing that can elevate one to transcend the modes. There are so many processes in the Vedas, but they are all essentially manipulating the modes because they are within the realm of the modes. So it's like a person is tied in a rope. So the three modes, they say, are like the three strands that are intertwined to make a rope that is unbreakable. And there may be some leeway within that rope. The person may be here and there, may be enjoying or suffering materially, but essentially bound by the rope. The only thing that can break the modes is bhakti. So that's why Krishna is saying Nistray Gun Bhavarjuna. Following the process of bhakti, become transcendental to this modes. And what? He says that once you're transcendental from the modes, be established in yourself, Atmavan. So what does being established in the self means? Be established in your spiritual identity. The spiritual identity of having an eternal relationship of service with Krishna. Right? So these are the symptoms of bhakti that Krishna is speaking about. So this is the last verse in that context. From verse 40 to 45, Krishna introduces us to the notion of bhakti, and this concluding verse is an impassioned plea by Krishna that please take to the process of bhakti. Right? Forget about the yam imam pushpitam vacham. That forget about the flowery words of the Vedas. Forget about the Vedavadratas who basically say that the Vedas are only about material gain. Take to the process of bhakti. Okay, so let's go on to the next verse. Verse 56. Yavanartudpane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. All purpose served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purpose of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So Krishna uses analogy to make a point. And we see that coming often, that Krishna and the Acharyas, they use the help of analogies to make a point. An analogy essentially, they capture a certain relationship. So analogies in themselves, they are not tattvas, they are not spiritual truths. They are simply mnemonics. They are means to show something. Right? So sometimes people get too absorbed in analogies and say, well, the reservoir of water can be used to feed the well, or the well can be used to feed the reservoir of water. That's not the purpose of analogy. The analogy is to understand it in the terms of the speaker. So what is the analogy that Krishna is using over here? That you can get water from two sources, from a well or from a lake. Now, everything that a well serves, the lake will serve also, and more so, because the water in the lake is unlimited. It's much larger compared to the water in the well. So what is Krishna explaining through this analogy? So the wells are considered to represent material endeavors. Right? So one may go to many wells to drink water. In earlier villages, there were wells that were for different purposes. There was one well for drinking, one well for cleaning, one well for irrigation. So there were wells for different purposes. So one may go to different wells for different purposes. And this is the process of material enjoyment. Or one may go to the lake and from the lake get all the water they need. So this is essentially glorifying the process of Sakam Bhakti. So when Krishna has been speaking about bhakti through its symptoms in verses 40 to 45, Arjun might say, I'm not ready to perform bhakti at that stage. I still have desires. Krishna says, no worries. Even if you have desires, the performance of bhakti is glorious because it is still vyavasatmika. Why is it vyavasatmika? Because the object of worship is one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So if one is Sakami, then one can go to different demigods. Like it is said, if one wants a good wife, he worships Gauri Shankar. If one wants wealth, they worship Ganesh. If one wants great prowess, they worship Lord Shiva. Right? So they can go to different demigods, different devas for different desires. Just like one goes to different wells for different purposes. Or one can go to Krishna with all those desires. And Krishna will fulfill all the desires, but at the same time is also bestowing bhakti because you are still going to Krishna. So the characteristic of bhakti is that it's in relationship to Krishna. Whether you are going with or without desires, if it is in relationship to Krishna, it's bhakti. Now, better than sakam is nishkam. Right? You go to Krishna just for the sake of serving him, that is better. But if you cannot reach that state, then go with desires. Go with your material desires. And Krishna will fulfill them and will purify them. Right? So in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10, this famous verse, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kamodaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Like akam means you have no desires. Sarvakam means you are full of desires. Moksha kam means that you are desiring liberation. So whether you are without desires, full of desires, or desiring liberation, tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Purusham param refers to Krishna. That if you are worshipping Krishna, tivrena bhakti yogena, then devotion will manifest in you very quickly. So Krishna in this verse is extending himself. Right? He is not saying that I am only available to those who have expunged all material desires. But he is saying I am also available to those who are full of material desires, but still come to me. Right? So in the next verse, Krishna will speak to Arjun more in terms of specificity. So far he's been giving alternatives, Sakam, Nishkam, Bhakti. Now he will give specificity to Arjun. Okay, next verse. Okay, and the next verse we will do in our next recording. It's a very famous verse that very widely quoted and misquoted. So we will do it in our subsequent lecture and end this one here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.